Hey, what's happening? It's your host Tinto, and hey, I know, I'm sorry, I'm like 2 episodes late, but when you're buzzing on the kind of high that I am for the achievement and the incredible support, you just have to bask in it and simply enjoy it. Guys, I'm now sitting at 526,000 downloads and streams, and I've had incredible financial support from every single one of you that have enjoyed the podcast. Well, maybe not every single one, but a good number of you. And I just want to give a shout out to people in the UK who are the top contributors and the top listeners, followed by making up 28% of listenership, followed by people in the motherland, Zimbabwe, and then right after that, South Africa, then the United States, Australia, Canada, Germany, Kenya, Nigeria, the United Arab Emirates, New Zealand, Namibia, Ireland, Poland, and Zambia. You guys are absolutely amazing. I don't want to go into the weeds because I'll leave that for the bonus episode, so I'll get cracking on today's episode. If you still feel that you want to support the podcast and were not able to do so on the 1st of December, please head over to www.buymeacoffee.com/feeling station and give as your spirit leads. Remember, there is nothing too small to support the podcast that you've grown to love. You guys are incredible. I love you all to bits.
Is that a breakup? I think we have a situation right here.
On the Feeling Station.
Hello?
Hey, what's up?
Oh, finally.
Finally, you can say that again. Honestly, I don't know what the hell is happening with my system these days. One day it's working okay and the next is completely berserk and mental.
I thought we weren't going to do the podcast.
Nah, there's no way that's not gonna happen. Welcome to the Feeling Station.
Okay. Thank you.
For those listening to this podcast for the first time, it's a romantic and family breakup podcast showcasing stories that people would like to talk about with a view to give lessons from their experiences. I hope you find today's story entertaining, but more importantly, meaningful. Now, the podcast is popular for 2 main reasons. The first being I do my best to keep my guests anonymous, which brings me to the fun part. Are you ready for this one?
Mm-hmm.
Right, so I'm giving you a name that you're going to use for the duration of the episode from West Africa.
Okay.
And your name is Onika, which is Onika. Onika.
All right.
And what that means is who is greater than God.
Wow.
So I've gone over to the spiritual side. And this is who is greater than God.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's what your name means. And what are you calling the guy that you're going to talk about?
Madman.
Madman, yeah?
Yeah.
Wow, madman.
Yeah, he was an actual madman. Anyway.
And now I can't wait to hear the lessons. So the second reason why the podcast is popular is there real life lessons that people learn from the experience that you're going to hear today. So what lessons have you got for me there, Onika?
Okay, my first lesson is that people don't change.
Hey. Especially if the guy's name is Madman, yeah?
Yeah.
So people don't change.
Yeah, something similar to that is that past behavior usually predicts future behavior.
Yes.
The number 2 one is excitement is not love.
Excitement is not love.
Yeah,
Ooh.
good relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah, good relationships take time to build, and it's okay for them to be calm and steady.
Oh, yeah.
They don't have to be exciting.
Yeah. Normally when they're exciting, we call it infatuation.
Yes, precisely.
And if you got a third one?
The third one is some people come into your life to reveal your childhood wounds.
Ooh. Is that what Madman did for you?
Yes, definitely.
Crazy. Have you got another one for me, or that's all 3?
No, the fourth one is people tell on themselves like all the time.
Okay, I'm not used to that one because I'm used to friends snitching on someone, but here saying people tell on themselves all the time, right?
We just don't listen. Like they'll tell you things about themselves, but we just don't listen.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
It's cliche. Everyone mentions it, but don't ignore the red flags.
I almost feel like I should call this the Red Flags podcast. Right? Because it's always the same. I want to make sure I got the fourth one right. The fourth one is people tell on themselves all the time, We just don't listen. Okay, cool. Yeah, I wanted to make sure I got that.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. Are those all the lessons?
Yes, that's it.
Okay, so I'll play these back. Lesson number 1, people don't change. Past behavior usually predicts future behavior. And then number 2, excitement is not love. Good relationships take time to build. Number 3, some people come into your life to reveal your childhood wounds. Oh, that's really powerful. Number 4, people tell on themselves all the time. We just don't listen. And last but not least, don't ignore the red flags.
Yes.
So, Onika, let's jump straight into this. Where did you meet Madman and why did you decide, this is the guy for me?
Okay, so I'll give you a background of the story. I actually met Madman when I was in a relationship. So I was in a relationship and it was dry. Like the relationship was not going well at all. Yeah, I had pretty much fallen out of love with this guy. So we were dating in college and I had just finished university. I was working. He wasn't. So it was one of those situations. I had a job. He didn't have a job. So he was starting to get insecure. And it put a lot of strain on the relationship.
Right.
So it was one of those things. I kind of fell out of love while I was still dating the guy.
Right.
So it was around this time I got a text from a friend and she was like, there's this guy who was my friend and he saw you somewhere and he really liked you. And I was like, okay. And she's like, oh, he really wants your number. So I'm like, okay, how does he know that we know each other? So he was like, he found out your name and he searched on Facebook and he went to see who your friends are and he found me. And then he was like, oh, do you know Onika? And I was like, yes. So he was like, okay, could you ask if I could get her number? So I was like, okay, like that's not going to hurt. You can give him my number. So within 30 minutes, this guy texted me.
Okay.
Yeah, and for some reason, I was just so drawn to him, even via text, because his texts were so exciting. I don't know if it's because my relationship was already so boring.
It was finished.
This was something new.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this was new. It was exciting. We started to talk. In the middle of the talking, I eventually told him that I'm in a relationship, so this is not going to go anywhere.
Okay.
So he was like, okay, like, I don't want to ruin your relationship. So if you want to stop talking to me, that's fine. So I was like, do I really want to give this guy up? Like, he just seemed so interesting. So I just kept him on the burner.
Out of curiosity, so you found this guy intriguing. You told him that you had a boyfriend, but you weren't sure whether you wanted to take it further. But you also knew you kind of may have wanted to.
Yeah.
Why didn't you just tell him from the onset, hey, before we go anywhere with this, I'm in a relationship, instead of telling him later on? Then that way, maybe he wouldn't have told you all the nice stuff that got you intrigued.
No, it wasn't even that deep. Like we were just at, okay, tell me about yourself level. So we hadn't met or anything like that. It was just still getting to know him face. So there was stage, yes, it was an early talking stage. So days went by. We weren't really talking as much. So there was my boyfriend at the time had a friend who had a crush on me. And he came to me this day and he was like, your boyfriend is cheating on you.
Ooh.
So I'm like, what? Like, cheating on me with who? He's like, oh, she's a younger girl. She's a first-year student. He's been telling people that you pretty much, he doesn't like you. You just stick around and he doesn't even want you. So you need to find out about this. So at this point, the relationship was really dead. And somebody's coming to me and telling me somebody's cheating on me. I just immediately broke up with him. So, yeah, I broke up with him and pretty much jumped onto the next relationship with Madman.
Onika, I really don't want to drag the previous relationship on. But, I just have one question. Um, you knew your relationship was dead. As soon as an
Yeah.
opportunity came for you to jump, you jumped knowing that you had a crutch to lean on, which was the next guy.
Yeah.
So did you not leave the first guy because you didn't feel you had the strength to move on, even though it was dead?
I actually didn't know what to do because we had dated for so long, maybe since my first year in university.
Mm.
So it was one of those like I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to leave him heartbroken. I wasn't happy, but I just didn't know what to do. So when this information came, it was my excuse to leave because it was gonna put the blame on him and not on me.
So you knew what to do, but you just didn't want to have the emotional burden of knowing that you broke somebody's heart.
Yes, precisely.
Onika, that was a bit selfish.
I know. I know. Yes, so then
Okay.
I left this relationship and he kept coming back. He pleaded and pleaded so many times, but because I was so ready to leave, I just didn't care for it. Like
Mm-hmm.
now I was focused on Madman. So now my situation with Madman, everything just seemed to come into sync because his family members worked with some of my family members. So I
Ooh.
immediately started to trust him like prematurely
Mm-mm.
because I remember his sister worked with my mom. And it was one of those, I knew the sister way before I even knew him.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, okay, like he's not gonna harm me. Like if I know his family members, I mean this guy means well. So I even remember telling him, like, I know your sister, and he was like, oh, that's a good sign. It means we're meant to be together. He was just like, he was just charming me like to the full. So early into us talking, I went to his house one day.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the reason why I went to his house was he was babysitting. So he had a child,
Mm-hmm.
or he has a child rather. So he was like, okay, I can't leave the house to take you on a date. How about you come to mine? I'm babysitting today, so I'm not going to be able to leave. So just come through. So I was like, okay, this guy already knows people that I know. I know people that he's related to. It's not going to be harmful, right?
Mm.
So I drove to his house and I got to his house and I was just like in love with everything already. So I'm looking at like this guy is well put together, like his life is going on well, like he looks like he's a good dad. His conversation was great. Everything was just, I was just swept off my feet, basically. And I remember the first time I went over, he ended up kissing me.
Ah.
And
Okay. How far?
Yeah,
How far
okay.
into you guys being at the talking stage was this?
Maybe
This
a
first kiss.
month.
Oh, okay. So it was about a month.
Yeah,
So all
yeah, it was
along,
about a month.
you guys were texting more than you were seeing each other.
Yes, and it was because I was still reluctant to meet up with him.
Why?
Like, I don't know, because I still had this guilt. I still had guilt.
Oh, okay. Right. Okay. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, but when I eventually started seeing him, I pretty much went to his house every day.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
okay, so then something weird happened back to the first time I visited him. So I remember looking at my phone. I was texting one of my friends. There's some of those friends that you tell like nitty-gritty details about your day to. So I was like, okay, I've met this new man, Madman. I'm at his house. And Madman came to look over my phone. And he was like, so who are you texting? And he was so curious to look at my phone, curious to see who I'm talking to. At first, I found that weird, but because he was so charming, I quickly brushed it off. I was like, okay, maybe he's just really curious about my life. I just left it alone.
Yeah.
Yeah, so as we went on into the relationship, I noticed that he started to preach about, okay, Onika, I want you and I to be open with each other. I want us to be able to trust each other.
Mm-hmm.
I want our relationship to be as open as possible. So I want you to be able to look at my phone, and I'll be able to look at yours too.
Okay, madman. We all know that move. We all know that move. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So then I'm like, okay. I didn't really think much into it. I was like, okay, so this guy wants us to be open. So if I can see his phone, it means that, he's innocent, right? I was quite young, so excuse me for being naive. So, yeah, I was like, okay, that's okay. Like, you can look at my phone. So then he started to do that. He would look at my phone, and it started like so swiftly. Like, he would just ask me like innocent questions, like, "Oh, who is this?" And I would explain it to him, like, "Oh, okay, this is so and so, and this is so and so." And he was like, "Oh, okay, cool."
So hold
nothing.
up. So hold up a sec.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you have this conversation about being open and transparent about being in each other's phones on a Monday.
Mm-hmm.
How soon did he start going into your phone? A few days after?
Immediately.
Immediately, like right there. And how would it happen? Was he like, "Onika, can I look at your phone?" Or he's like, "Pass me your phone"?
Yeah, it was one of those like, "Oh, can I see your phone?" And then he had my password, and I'll just give him the phone. And it was okay at this point, because we were at that phase where this man was doing the most. Like, he would make me delicious meals. He would cook me new recipes every day I visited him. Like, he would send me chocolates to the office, and he was buying me gifts left and right. And even my friends were like, "Wow, you found a heavenly man. Like, where did you get him?" So at this point, I'm like, okay, I found a soulmate. Like, wow.
Mm-hmm.
We even had this thing we'd tell each other, like, you're my only exception. I want this relationship to end into marriage. And I was like, yeah, like, I really see us working. It was a whirlwind romance, pretty much. Yeah. So Valentine's Day came. He bought me this big bouquet of flowers and chocolate. And I was, as usual, I was intrigued by everything. And pretty much this was the first. Okay, mind you, he hadn't asked me to be his girlfriend yet.
And this was how far in?
Maybe now 2 months. No,
Okay.
The relationship was moving quite fast.
So you're saying he hadn't asked you to be his girlfriend. So I don't know if I'd call that a relationship yet. What was it?
It wasn't a relationship yet, but okay, I'm getting to that. Valentine's Day, after his big presentation of the bouquet and the flowers, is when he was like, I ended up sleeping with him that night.
On Valentine's Day?
Yes.
Hey, talk about a bed of roses, huh? A guy came loaded with a bouquet earlier on because and remember, this guy is a chef busy whipping you with new recipes. We call that marinating. This guy seems very intentional about what he's doing. Yeah.
And he was so good at it.
Okay, yes. Mm-hmm.
So then our first night, you can imagine, like, after all this was happening, it was explosive. It was really good. And I was like, yo. So, like, right when we were panting on each other, he was like, "I want you to be my girlfriend." And
in the heat of the moment. I hope there are men listening to this, because a lot of marriages have been proposed in the heat of that moment. And some guys have not been able to backtrack. And cars have been promised. Expensive holidays have been promised. Madman is just like one of us. Hey, okay, so in the heat of the moment during the panting, he goes, "I want you to be my girlfriend." Yeah? And what were you like? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, so that's what happened. Yeah,
Okay.
I was like, yes, I'm gonna be your girlfriend. So then the relationship moved on to the third level where I'm meeting everybody, like
Mm.
all his friends, his family, like he was just so excited to
Yeah.
introduce me to everyone.
Mm.
And I was like, oh, okay, this man is really intentional about being with me in the long run.
Mm.
Yeah, so then we would go to these events, we would travel together. Everyone in his circle liked me. I felt accepted, and things were just going on really well.
Mm.
Yeah. So then I remember this one day I was at his house, right?
Mm.
He made me one of the delicious meals, and he got a phone call.
Mm-hmm.
So he got this phone call from some lady from his office, and he ignored it. So, okay, I was like, okay, who just called you? Remember,
Mm-hmm.
we're supposed to be
To be
open
open,
with each
yeah,
other,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, who just called you? And he's like, oh, he mentions her name. Let's just call her. Okay, do you have a name in mind?
You can call her Lucy.
Okay, yes, Lucy. So he was like, oh, Lucy has been on my case for the longest time.
On my case
she's
for
been
what?
like Lucy apparently liked him and he didn't like her back.
Right.
Yeah, so he was like, Lucy has been wanting me for some time, but I don't want Lucy. Yeah, like she's just so she sticks to me. Like I don't even want her. I don't like this woman. Actually, I stopped talking to her. So if you notice, she calls me, but I don't call her. So then he would go to his phone log and he'd be like, do you see me calling Lucy? Do you see me?
Right.
Lucy calls me, but I don't call Lucy. So there were several occasions of him telling me this. Oh, there was this girl. She likes me. I don't like her, but she always contacts me, but I don't contact her. Actually, at such a time, I stopped talking to her. So this sentence actually became a norm. Like he would describe a lot of his relationships ending in that way. Like, oh, I just stopped talking to them. So there was this one time he talked about his niece. His niece annoyed him. And he was like, oh, she annoyed me so much, I stopped talking to her.
So ghosting,
like, okay.
So ghosting is his thing.
Yes, like silent treatment rather.
Right.
Yeah, so I was like, okay. So if your niece didn't come to, okay, so he was like, okay, my niece, I stopped talking to my niece, but my niece keeps begging for me to have her, for me to be in her life again. So I'm like, what do you mean by begging? He's like, yeah, she begs.
And the thing is, this is your niece. They shouldn't need to do that. It's family. Who begs family to be family?
Exactly.
Mad.
So I'm like, okay, that's why he's a madman. Yeah, so I'm like, okay, so if she didn't beg to talk to you, what would have happened? He was like, then we wouldn't talk at all then. Like, everyone would just live their own lives. And I was like, okay. And then he continues to say, even my mom knows not to talk to me when she wants help.
What?
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, what do you mean? He's like, no, my sisters are the nicer people. My mom knows not to call me, like, ever. I'm not going to pick up her phone. Especially if she needs help.
Who does this guy think he is?
Oh, I'm like, I'm not even at the climax of the story. Wait. So then so there was this one time he even called her a bitch, and I was like,
called who
what?
a bitch?
His mother.
Girl, those are the biggest red flags on the planet for you.
I know.
How did you react to him calling his mother a bitch?
I was just so numb, but for some reason, like, he would just brush off the story and would be back to him charming me.
So you forgot that the moment the charm landed, you forgot what he called his mom.
Yeah, he was like, oh, she's so dramatic. Like, she knows not to do this. Like, she's just a dramatic bitch. Like, oh, okay.
Yes, wangu.
This was me ignoring big red flags. So then, as the relationship went on, he would tell me about his family dynamics, right? And he would be like, I was not raised in a loving home. I have issues with my mother. So he told me he wasn't okay. He had a really big age gap with his last sibling.
Like
He
how
says
big?
he was an accident baby, maybe like 15 years.
Yo.
So, so he was like, okay, my parents were done having children when they had me. So my mom wasn't ready for a baby when I was born. So she sent me to live with my brother. So then when I went to live with my brother did not care about me at all. Like, he would leave me for days in the house, maybe like a whole week, and I would fend for myself. So then I was like, oh, okay, so you weren't feeling loved at all? He was like, no, like, even when I got older, I really haven't felt loved in my life. And it all started to make sense. So then he would tap into my empathetic side, because now I've started to feel sorry for him. And I pretty much started to make excuses for his behavior. So like, he would act strange and I'd be like, okay, maybe it's because he doesn't really know what love is. So I'm gonna forgive him for this. So then relationship moved on to the 4th month. This guy is still checking my phone, right? Every time we meet, it was, Onika, let me see your phone. And
at what point were you like, madman, let me see your phone? Did you ever say that?
Okay. So there was this one time I asked him. I really didn't care about his phone that much, because I'm really not that type to like snoop through stuff. So, but just because he kept asking for my phone so much, there was this one day I was like, okay, madman, let me see your phone too. And I just found like messages of him and his family members, his friends. But there was this one text from some lady. Like, it was a way before we even dated, and they were talking about kissing each other and stuff. And I realized this lady still calls him, and he says the same thing to me, like, oh, that one. I stopped talking to her.
Right.
So there were a lot of those girls, but I didn't really have enough evidence for me to start a fight on. I was just like, okay, maybe these women really just want him. Like, he was a successful young man, good looking, he had everything going on for him. So I was like, okay, maybe the ladies just want him. They want a piece of him. I didn't think much about it. So now, 4th month into the relationship, he got my phone one day, and he found a text message, a very silly text message from one of my male friends. And we were talking about okra. So you know how slimy okra can get, right? Yeah.
Right.
So then he was like, Onika, can you imagine kissing somebody who's eaten okra? It was a serious conversation. And Madman read that conversation and he was like, who is this guy talking about kissing you? And I was like, but he's not talking about kissing me. Like, Onika, do you think, he's like, either you're acting dumb or you are dumb, because this man clearly wants you and you're not seeing that. And I was like, oh, okay. So it was after this text message that I experienced my first silent treatment with him.
Oh, okay. So now it's time to control this behavior, huh?
Yes, like he doesn't want me to talk to boys. Like now it was, every time he finds text messages from male people, he'd be like, Onika, can't you see this guy likes you? Why are you acting dumb? Either you're trying to play me or you really don't think well. So it was always, okay. I ended up I stopped talking to a lot of people because I wanted peace in the relationship.
The level of controlling behavior here is nuts.
So then I didn't notice it. Like, you won't believe it, but I didn't feel like I was being controlled. I was like, okay, this guy just cares about who is talking to me. I just created excuses every single time. So then he gave me his first silent treatment. He didn't talk to me for some days. And when I called him, I was like, okay, madman, why aren't you calling me? Like, you call me every single day, all the time. Why aren't you calling me? He's like, oh, I was just busy. And I'm like, busy with what? Oh, I've been traveling. I've just been busy. So I'm like, okay, so nothing is wrong. He's like, no, nothing's wrong. I'm like, are you sure? He's like, no. Why would you think anything is wrong? And I'm like, I just explained that you talk to me all the time. Like, why did you just suddenly stop?
Yeah.
He's like, no. So then I started to apologize. I'm like, okay, if I did something wrong, I'm sorry. And then he goes, okay, if you did nothing wrong, what are you sorry for? So then I would be so confused. Like, I didn't know what to do at this point. I'm apologizing and he says he's fine.
Yeah.
He says there's nothing to be sorry for if you did nothing wrong. But I didn't see what I did wrong. Like, I became so unhappy to the point where there was this one day my mom just found me in the living room, and I wasn't crying or anything, but I looked so defeated.
Right.
Like, my soul is just so deflated. Like, she found me in this like fetal position, and she was like, "What are you doing with this guy?" Because I would tell her about the relationship and what was happening, and then she would just be like, you need to leave this man. But then I was like, okay, but people are not perfect. I mean, if I leave him, what if I meet somebody worse? So, yeah, then the relationship would continue. So there would be times where I'll be with my friends, right? And he'll be like, okay, Onika, can I talk to your friend? Who are you with? So I'd be like, okay, I'm with Mary. So he'd be like, okay, let me talk to Mary. So then he would talk to Mary and he'd be like, oh, hi, Mary. He'd put on his nice face. Hi, Mary, how are you? So you're the one who's taking my girlfriend away from me? And then Mary would just be awkward and she would just laugh it off like, oh, no, like, we're just out for an ice cream date. And then he'd joke about it and he'd be like, make sure you bring her back on time. So then, yeah, and there were a lot more incidences like that where he didn't want me to be with anybody else but him. So I pretty much ended up spending all my time with him. So now let's talk about the time. Like, let's say we were supposed to meet up for a date, right? Maybe we would agree to meet at 10 o'clock. If God forbid I show up at 10, it would be a problem.
Okay, I'll let the story continue, but so far, there are big problems here. Control freak galore. Right, go on.
Yeah, so then I would show up at 10 and he would be like, Onika. So he would wear this serious face. Oh, I forgot to mention this guy was like 10 years older than I was.
Right.
So it gave him more power, I guess, because I was young. Like, he had done a lot more stuff than me.
Right.
So then 10, he'd be like, Onika, you're late. So then, like, he was planting this seed in my head that I had to be early for everything. Yeah, so I even got used to just being so early. Like, if Madman says we're meeting at 10, I'll show up at 10. Yeah, so then as the relationship progressed, he started to tell me stuff like, Onika, if we got married, I want my wife to quit her job. And I'm like, oh.
Yes.
Okay. Why? Like, I make enough money to take care of someone. So why should she be working? Like, she'll be at home taking care of the kids. And I'm like, oh, okay. At this point, I was just like, what's going on? And then another day, he's like, if we're making money and we're in a relationship, right? How do you feel about putting our money in one account? And I'm like,
Okay, yes.
And I'll be like, maybe when we get married, maybe we can do that. But right now, no. And he's like, no, like so many relationships work better when people have transparency. It was always about openness and transparency. We put money in one account, and when somebody wants to make a payment, they just take money out of that account. And it was just a lot. So then I should also mention the part where he would show up at the office unannounced.
Just like that.
Yeah, he would just show up, and I'll just see him sometimes in the office like, oh, okay, what are you doing here? And he'll be like, oh, Onika, I just came to surprise you. Yeah, I just came to see you. I just missed you so much. Like, I came to see what you're up to. So he'd bring gifts or something like that. It was later on in the relationship that I realized he was stalking me. So he just wanted to see that I'm not talking to other men, you know? Yeah. So then there was this one day at 3 a.m., Tinto, this guy called me. And he's like, Onika, you know, you've never told me who your exes are.
This is at 3 a.m.
Imagine.
Do you know the way that you said that? Sounds like somebody who's been sat on his desk pondering for hours. Who these exes might have been, how many they were, how you met, what you did, why you dumped them. Wow.
And I'd be like, why are you asking me this at 3 a.m.? And she'd be like, no, I just want to know who they are. What do they do? What do they look like? And I would be like, bruh, it's 3 a.m. I'm trying to sleep. He's like, no, I can't sleep if you don't tell me who your exes are. So just for the conversation to end, I would tell him, and then he would go to sleep. So this guy had a problem with insomnia, right? He literally had trouble sleeping.
Yeah, because the guy is always thinking and plotting how he can destabilize somebody's life. Jeez.
Pretty much. I like the way you thought of that. Yeah, he... Okay, so then, now as the relationship was progressing, I would have these conversations, right? So there was this one day I traveled. I went out of town. And I told him, like, you know, when I travel, my mom calls me a lot and she likes to ask me about my trip. Like, she just worries about me.
Yeah.
Guess what he answered me? He's like, oh, I don't care about anyone.
Meaning what? but then again, but then again, remember, this is a guy who calls his mom an inappropriate word.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, when you say you don't care about anyone, what do you mean? He's like, I mean just that. I don't feel anything. And I was just stunned. Like, this was the point he was becoming comfortable with me. And this is the part where I mentioned that people tell on themselves.
Yeah.
So then he pretty much told me he suffers from emotional emptiness, and there'll be days when I wake up in the morning and I greet him. He'll be like, are you not going to ask me how I am? And I'm like, why would I ask you? He's like, I don't know. Maybe I'm suffering from emotional emptiness. How would you know? So I'm like, okay, that's a very specific thing to say. So then I started to realize this guy doesn't express emotion. Like, if he's sad about something, he usually got diarrhea or something like that. So.
Yep.
Yeah. So then I remember this one time his dad died.
His dad died?
His father died. Yes, his father died. And I was so sad for him.
Yeah.
And this guy made jokes about the incident. Like, he just used the whole thing to get attention to himself. So, like, we'd be talking about something and he'd be like, Onika, I just lost my father. Is that how you treat somebody who lost their dad?
Man, this guy is not okay.
Yeah, like, he's a madman. So then, like, he got so much attention from his father dying. Imagine, like, I even saw it with his friends. Like, he would get attention from his friends. Like, his friends would do so many things for him, and he'll be like, "Oh, you guys, I'm so sad today. Like, don't you remember my father died? Like, okay."
Mm.
And then there would be times where, oh, there's a lot. There's a lot, Tinto. There'll be times when he would tell me stuff about his exes, right?
Yeah.
So I remember there was this one day he was like, there was a day I was driving down with my ex and she said something that annoyed me. So we had a fight in the car. So he's like, my ex hit me like on my chest. So you know what I did, Onika? I took her out of the car because I wanted to show her that violence is bad. So I took her out of the car and I slapped her on this side. And I flipped her head and I slapped her on the other side. So I'm like, okay, so you pretty much beat this woman. Yeah, but it was just to show her that violence is not good, right? And I'm like,
So what, violence is not good, but then you show how bad it is by being violent yourself.
Yeah. So I wanted her to feel the pain so that she should stop, so that she doesn't do it next time. And I'm like, okay. Now at this point, I was really starting to get freaked out. So then another occasion on another separate conversation, mind you, this guy called me every single day. So we had a lot to talk about. And this was the part where he was revealing stuff about himself. Another day he calls me and he's like, Onika, I went to the bar yesterday and the guy annoyed me. And I just started to beat the shit out of the guy. And you know what happened when I started beating him? Onika, I couldn't stop. Like, I just don't know what to do. Like, I just got angrier and angrier and I couldn't stop beating the guy. And I was like, oh no, like, this guy is a proper psycho. Like, I was pretty much dating a psychopath.
Now, from your previous relationship, you didn't want to be the one to leave and the blame is on you.
Yeah.
By this point, and then you wanted an excuse to leave. So the girl cheating, yes, was good enough for you to say, I'm out. You've been given a lot of reasons why you should be out now, starting from the point that he called his mom what he called her. And then now he's hinted that he beats people up, both male and females, and he can get out of control. Please tell me the day he told you that was the day he said, I'm leaving.
No, actually, the story continues. I'm about to finish.
Well, no, not to rush you, but what did you stick around for, knowing that this guy is saying a lot of the stuff that is actually freaking you out?
I don't know. It was just that feeling like, okay, remember we had a golden period at the beginning of the relationship. So my mind was stuck on that. And it was at this point I realized why people stay in abusive relationships. Not that I condone it, but I understood it. Because your mind always goes back to the time he was such a sweet person. He was a darling. Life was just perfect. It was roses and butterflies and all the good stuff. Like, he just made me feel so good about myself. So I just wanted that guy back. So I would work hard to get that guy back. And all the stuff that was happening, it was like, no, he's not going to do that to me. He loves me, remember?
This just reminds me of a quote that I read on Instagram where someone says, please don't be tactical with me when I'm being intentional with you. And that's what was happening here. You were being intentional with this guy and you're giving him 100% of you, but he was being tactical. He probably knew from his past relationships that if I'm nice to this woman from the get-go and I'm absolutely amazing, she will remember that. And she will use that as the reminder when I start doing my bullshit. And this is what you're just describing.
Yeah.
So he seems to have a strategy that works, in quotes.
It pretty much does. Like, he was a sweetheart. You can't believe it.
Wow.
So then, the story continues. So, Tinto, on 2 occasions, I remember losing family members that were close to me, right? In the first instance, so I had this uncle who had a terminal illness. And I remember going to the hospital one day, and as soon as I arrived at the hospital, I saw this man take his last breath.
Oh.
So then I'm explaining this to Madman, right?
Yeah.
Madman who has no emotions. I'm telling Madman that this is what I've experienced. I've just seen somebody die.
Yeah.
And the story that he gave me was just a very, it happens. Like, people are meant to die.
Aye, bone, man. He didn't say that.
Yeah, he did. So then I'm like, he's like, the man was suffering. He should have died. And I was just like, So then during the whole funeral process, I didn't talk to Madman. And this guy would get angry at me, like, Onika, why are you ignoring me? So there was this one time in the evening, he called me. He's like, Onika, I haven't heard from you all day. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. Like, and at this point, he was angry at me. And I'm like, Madman, I'm at a funeral.
Yeah.
Why are you making this about you?
Yeah.
And then he pretends to be normal-ish, and he's like, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize it. I just missed you. And I'm like, okay. So this guy doesn't even care that I'm grieving or anything. He really just wanted my attention. And then now there was a second time, another family member passed on. And it was also a very traumatic experience because this person pretty much died in my presence as well. And I was explaining the whole situation to him. And he said the same thing, like, oh, this person was suffering, Onika. They needed to go.
What is wrong with this man?
Everything. So then,
wow.
The same thing happened when we were at the funeral. We went to the village to bury my great aunt. And pretty much the moments that I wasn't texting him, he was mad at me. He's like, Onika, why aren't you texting me? And it was just one of those, who are you talking to? Can you send me a screenshot of who you're talking to? And I'm
what?
like, man, I'm at a funeral.
And all of this is in the name of transparency, I guess.
Imagine.
You know, that you must be transparent with me about who you're texting and whatever.
He was just controlling me. And I didn't realize it until I left the relationship that this was happening to me. I kid you not, I did not realize it.
So tell me something. When he's busy saying to you, I want to see who you're texting, did you actually send that screenshot?
Yeah, because I was so into the relationship, I'd be like trying to comfort him, like, look, I'm not talking to anybody. He's like, no, I noticed a time lag of 2 minutes between the time I sent my last text.
And then the man says he's got insomnia, yeah? When he's so fixated on the tiniest of details like this, I noticed there's a 2-minute lag between the send button and your response.
Imagine.
Lord have mercy.
Yeah, so he would notice 2-minute lag and there would be a problem. And I forgot the part where he would lecture me about life, and it was just, he just felt like, like I've just found something to control. Like, I was at his mercy.
So, okay, so give me one of the lectures about life. What would he say?
It was the most random stuff, like about, okay, so this guy really likes traveling, right? So he would give me like travel tips because he had been to so many countries and I hadn't been to any at this point. So he would pretty much boast to me about what to do when you're outside, like what to do at the airport, you know, stuff like that. Like he just found somebody to pretty much boast to.
What do you mean when they say what to do at an airport? Like
details, like, you know, when you get to the airport, this is what you do. Like he just found somebody to pretty much. It was like I was under him.
So you would sit down to this whole lecture about what to do when you get to an airport.
Yeah, because I told him I hadn't hadn't traveled yet. At the time, I hadn't traveled to a country abroad. So he just found an excuse like to shine on me. So he would, like, most of the times when we meet, he would be on his phone and he would be like, Onika, come, let me see you where I've been. Let me show you where I've been.
Okay, so did you find that lecture useful in terms of what you do at the airport, etc., etc.?
There were things that he did tell me that were really useful. Like, the guy was actually intellectually smart.
Yeah, I don't know what intellect is required about arriving at an airport, walking through the doors, looking for a desk where you get checked in, getting checked in, people looking at your bags and confirming your passport, and then you're off onto the plane. Where's the intellect? Why are you giving this guy such credit?
No, I'm not talking about the airport being intellectual, but there was several other things that I actually learned from him. Like,
I was talking about the airport, but okay, let me not dwell on that.
Okay.
Yeah, let me not dwell on that. This is already way too weird for me. This guy. Anyway, yes, go on.
So, like, it even got to a point where my cousins would go to him for like life advice. Like, he was.
Now he's not only your girlfriend; he's a life coach. Yeah.
Yeah, like, because he was so much older than us, so like he obviously had more experience. So even with things like building a house, like, this is what you do, these are the tips. He was just, he just found somebody to shine on.
How many houses did you have, by the way?
I think just one. Yeah, but he pretty much found every excuse to boast to me about the things that he has experienced that I haven't, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well.
That's the point I was driving at.
Okay.
Okay, so then, now let me move on to the last part of the story. So, as per usual, remember I told you I was always with him, right, and his friends? So there was this one weekend, he was like, Onika, let's go to the lake. We're going with my friends. Okay, I got excited. We're going to the beach with his friends who were 10 years older than I was. I was the only young one. So then we go to the beach. It was so boring, like, because these guys were just lying there, and I wanted to do exciting things, but everyone was just like, oh, we'll just come here to chill. But I noticed something about Madman. Like, he was so cold to me the whole trip. So I remember how he was so sensual when he asked me to be his girlfriend.
Yeah.
This time around, like, he would just put it in and he wouldn't even wait for me to get ready.
So no foreplay.
No, I even remember getting a huge cut because, yeah, it was really bad now. Like,
but what happened to transparency? Okay, Madman, hey, look, listen, why don't you do one or two things to get me ready? Because what you're doing is painful. Because having a cut, especially down there, I mean, I don't have a cookie, but I can only imagine what that feels like, right? I've had a paper cut on my finger.
Yeah.
Right? And my finger, I don't think is anywhere near as sensitive as your cookie.
Yeah.
So.
But I don't know. I was just confused, to be honest. Like, because I was like, okay, what has happened to Mr. Nice Guy?
Yeah.
Like, he was just, for me, I thought the original guy that I met was his actual character. So in my head, I was like, okay, why is this guy acting out of character? So he would do all these things and I would just be there, like, confused. So I remember on this trip, I got sick, Tinto. And this man did not give a shit about my illness. It was his friends that were looking after me.
When you say
like,
you got sick, how bad did you get?
Like, I got so I get like asthmatic attacks and so it was, I was going through one of those episodes. So I really wasn't feeling well. And he didn't know what to do with me. Like, he did not know what to do. So he would just, like, he was treating me so mean to the point where his friends noticed and they confronted him about it. They were like, Madman, is this not your girlfriend? Like, why are you treating her like that? And he was like, So like even when it was time like to give me a blanket, maybe I say I'm feeling cold, like he would just throw it on me. Like
How long had you guys been together by this point?
Maybe this was like 6 months. All this happened in a short time, eh?
It feels that way.
Yeah, so then he would just throw the blanket on me and he would just be like, hey, just use this thing. You should be fine when you use this. And everyone was just looking at him like, you madman. Why are you treating this girl like this? So it was his friends who were taking care of me. So it was at this point I realized, okay, this guy cannot take care of me when I'm sick. He cannot console me if I've lost somebody. He just didn't care about me like that. Like, he just cared about himself. And then we came back from that trip. I was still sick. He did not check on me. But I remember him calling me maybe 2 days later. And I was explaining something to him, like something that was on my phone. So I was like, oh, like so-and-so told me this story. And he was like, what? Why didn't you tell me? And I'm like, tell you what? He's like, Onika, I told you I want to know everything that's happening in your life. So I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, when people tell you stories, I want to know about them. And I'm like, what? He's like, why don't you tell me? Like, then he got so angry and he swore at me, like on the phone. And he was like, why the fuck did you not tell me about this story? Monica, I told you I want to know things that happen in your life. I want to know everything. I want to know each and every second of your life. Why didn't you tell me about this? And I'm like, it was such a random story. It had nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
What do you mean you wanted to know? Like, he was like, he just cut the phone on me. So it was at this point, I pretty much called my cousin. Like, I'm really close to my cousin. And I called him and I was like, madman just threw a tantrum at me and I feel so traumatized. And my cousin just called, because my cousin had spoken to him, like he felt like the right person to contact after this. And he was just like, Onika, enough is enough. You need to leave this guy. Like, now it's just getting worse and worse. And he sounds like he's going to start getting physical with you.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So then I texted Madman and I was like, Madman, nobody talks to me like this. Like, you cannot talk to me like this. And then he texted back and he was like, oh, Onika, I'm sorry. It's just that sometimes I act strange because I have trust issues. But so he was sensing that I was about to leave him. So then he's like, I'm going to end up being a bad boyfriend to you. So I'm just going to leave. So I was like, okay. So like the relationship pretty much just ended like abruptly as well.
Which was the trend.
Yeah.
Because that's what this man, this is what this man would do if he gets into a tight corner, like with his niece and everybody, you just cut them off.
Yeah.
So he's ghosted his nieces, he calls his mom things and he's like, oh yeah, this one always wants me, but I never reply. Look at my messages, I never get back. This guy is such a control freak. When he starts seeing that this is going to get out of control, instead of being the one to be told, I no longer want to deal with you, then he wants to do all the dumping.
Yes. So I pretty much figured everything that had happened with his exes, he was doing to me. And he pretty much told me about it. I just didn't listen. He forewarned me pretty much.
This is shocking. But, as shocking as it is, though, there's one thing I'm really grateful for. That no physical contact came your way, because I think
that's true.
You were in the line of fire and you were ripe and ready. And remember, this whole thing, you keep saying that he told you about himself, but you weren't listening. He's told you, I've beaten a woman before. And then he's also told you, I've beaten a guy up and I've lost control. So he's kind of preparing you so that on the day it actually happens, it's not as big a surprise.
Yeah. Yeah.
I am speechless. Yeah.
After the relationship ended, I was so traumatized.
Mm.
I went to the internet because I was like, okay, there's something wrong with this man, but I just can't put my finger on it. Like I
Mm.
didn't have a word for it. So I went into deep research,
Mm.
into like deep research, and I finally got a word. And the word that kept popping up was this guy was a narcissist.
Oh, right.
Yeah, he was just a narcissist. Like the relationship just followed the trend. Like he love bombed me, he devalued me, and then he discarded me. And as I kept reading through the books, there was this thing that everyone kept saying they always come back. Like it doesn't matter what they do
Mm.
or how bad the relationship ended, these people come back and they come back like nothing happened. And that's exactly what he did. Like months had gone by, maybe a year had gone by after we stopped talking. And one day he just popped up in my inbox with a whole different number and he acted like nothing
Nothing
happened.
happened.
Yeah, and he was
Wow.
back to Mr. Sweet Guy. Can I take you on a date?
Mm.
And
So that the cycle would begin again, wouldn't it? Because hopefully you've had enough
yes,
time to forget about how bad I was to you.
yes. Now, the silly part is I was curious because now I had read so many books and I was like, okay, let me see what's going to happen. So then the cycle did start again. And for some reason, I ended up talking to this guy again. And
Mm.
the cycle pretty much repeated itself until like I had to get to a point where I just had to be done because the cycle was shorter this time, but it was worse. And he just was more weird. So I had to
When you say it was worse, in what way? Did he ever lay a hand on you?
not lay my hand on me, but at this point, he didn't feel the need to pretend to be nice. He was just weird. Like, if he was going to say ruthless stuff, he didn't even hide it. Like, I remember sending him a picture of myself. Like, I took a selfie one day and I sent it to him. And the only thing he said to me was, "Oh, you look sickly in this photo." So, so it just got like I got to a point where I just didn't feel like myself around him, and I was just like, "Hey, like you need to go."
And then did you
Yeah, so
and then did you have the strength at that point to say I'm out?
yeah, I was just tired.
Yeah.
So at this point, I hadn't blocked him before.
Mm.
Like on my other social media platforms, I blocked him on my WhatsApp, but I didn't block him on Facebook and other stuff. But this time around, I just made it a point to block him everywhere so he doesn't even have the chance to even see anything of mine. Because the moment he remembers that I exist, he's gonna want to contact me.
Mm.
So yeah, I just blocked him from everything. So now going back to my other lesson where I
Yeah.
talked about childhood wounds, right?
Yeah.
I ended up figuring out that the reason I didn't really find anything wrong with this relationship was because my relationship with my dad as a child was so weird. Like, I pretty much realized I was given silent treatment. I was one of those kids where my dad expected a lot from me.
Yeah.
Like, he was just one of those, like, he wanted me to be a performer, an achiever. Like, if I don't do what he wants, he would disapprove of me so much. So I always worked hard to get his approval, you know?
Mm.
So it was coming back to this relationship where I was working hard to get Madman's approval, even when I didn't need to, even when I knew that I am good enough. There was this inner child in me that really needed his attention. And when in the beginning of the relationship, he was showing me the love that I desperately wanted as a child. So it was just a lot. It was a very big learning curve for me. Like, I got to dig up a lot of my childhood issues, and I even had some conversations with my father about the issues that I had with him and his parenting styles.
Yeah.
So it was a very enlightening experience.
I really don't know what to say, because because what you've just described in the last minute or two is so profound and so deep.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of what we do within our adult life, we don't like to recognize that it may be deeply rooted in things that happened to us when we were younger.
Mm-hmm.
Or if we do try and get there, it's not everybody that's able to make it crystal clear.
Yeah, that's true.
So this guy, he did help you realize some of those things, but the risk to you of having gone through all of that is scary, to say the least.
Yeah, that's true.
But hey, here you are today.
Yeah.
You live to tell the story.
Yes, and I lived through it, and I'm happy. I found myself. I just got to a point where I don't find happiness in people. I had to find things that make me happy within myself.
Yeah.
There's a lot of work that I'm still doing. I haven't gotten there yet, but I've made quite a lot of progress.
And for the best part, that's what matters. That you've done the work, you're doing the time. And one of your lessons there is excitement is not love, right? I want to ignore that part.
Yes.
But the second bit of that lesson is good relationships take time to build.
Mm-hmm.
And this good relationship that you're building now is relationship with yourself.
Yes. Oh, I like that.
Yeah, so don't rush it. Let it be an own lesson to you. And then remember, your lesson number 4 is people tell on themselves all the time. You are literally telling on yourself right now that I'm not in a good space, and you don't feel it's happening quick enough. But your lesson number 2 is good relationships take time to build. So take whatever time you have to.
Yeah, thank you for that.
No, thank you, Anika, for sharing that incredible story. I'm still freaked out by the first thing that he did was look at your phone as he was walking past you, because already that's like, okay. Just to play back your lessons. Number 1, people don't change. Past behavior usually predicts future behavior. You couldn't have said that any better. Lesson number 2, excitement is not love. Good relationships take time to build, and I hope you take time with yourself to build a good relationship with you. Lesson number 3, some people come into your life to reveal your childhood wounds, and this was very apparent because now it revealed something about your relationship with your dad. Number 4, people tell on themselves all the time. We just don't listen. This is very profound because he did tell you a lot about himself, but it wasn't easy to tap into it because you got so distracted by how good, in quote, he was at the beginning. And then last but not least, do not ignore the red flags, fam. This guy was a walking red flag, okay? I'm in the UK, I'm in London. He was a freaking London red bus. He was a mobile double-decker. You can't miss him. Oh, man. Well, thanks, Anika, for making time. You guys have all been listening to an incredible episode of The Feeling Station. I'm your host, Tinto, and I will catch you in next weekend's episode. Peace.
Tell me what you're feeling.
Satis on Daru Raini and Chake Zain.
Tell me what you're feeling. Now that it's over.
Satis on Daru Raini and Chake Zain.
Let me talk about my feelings. Let me talk about my feelings, yeah.
Urudoi motoru no to kujiziru amai.
Kujiziru amai. Love is a fire.
Urudoi motoru no to kujiziru amai.